Okay, the rate of return analysis can also be used to evaluate alternatives between different economic decisions. So if it is being correctly performed, it will result in the same selection as the present worth or the future worth or the annual worth analysis. Okay, let's look at this example. In this scenario, the research group received a fund of $90,000. So they have two options on how they can invest the fund. The first option requires them to invest $50,000 and it have a pretty high rate of return of 35%. The second option requires them to invest higher amount, which is $85,000, with a lower rate of return of 29%. Ideally, we will look at the investment with higher rate of return to make decisions. Higher rate of return to their investment means more money coming in. Alternative A have the higher rate of return of 35%, but its initial investment is not as high as Alternative B, which is $85,000. So, in ROR analysis or rate of return analysis, we assume that the remaining funds which are not invested are then invested at the company's minimum attractive rate of return or MARR. For example, in Alternative A, if we used up $50,000 for initial investment, the remaining balance of the fund, which is $40,000, will be invested at the company's minimum rate of return of 16%. In order to get the overall rate of return, we will perform the weighted average calculation, whereby 50,000 multiplied with 35% rate of return or 0.35 plus the remaining fund of $40,000 multiplied with 16% rate of return or 0.16 and divide it with the total fund received, which is $90,000. We then multiply the average value with 100% and we will get the overall rate of return to be 26.6%. If you repeat the calculation for Alternative B, we will get an overall rate of return of 28.3%. If you compare between both values, it seems like Alternative B offers the better alternative as it has higher rate of return. Even though the investment rate is not as high as Alternative A, but we look at the overall rate of return. Okay, you can use incremental rate of return analysis to provide some kind of ranking to the alternatives, similar to the present worth and annual worth method. So in this case, equal life is very necessary when performing the rate of return analysis. So unlike the annual worth, so similar to the present worth, you need to make sure the life of your cash flow is the same. So that way you have to use the least common multiple method lah. Okay, so the formula when using incremental cash flow is that the higher cash flow minus or deduct with the lower cash flow. Okay, let's look at the example. Okay, let us first draw the cash flow diagram. If you notice, the life is not the same between Alternative A and Alternative B. As I mentioned earlier, you need to use the least common multiply method to ensure both cash flow have the same timeline. So for Alternative A, you can draw the cash flow diagram as usual, but in Alternative B, you have to multiply the cash flow diagram into two equal repetitive patterns so that we can get 10 years in our timeline, similar to Alternative A. So the least common multiplier has been covered in previous chapters, so I'm not going to go into detail for the LCM method in this video. In order to evaluate this problem using the ROR analysis, we need to follow the evaluation steps accordingly. Let's look at it one by one. In step 1, you need to order or rearrange the alternatives by initial investment or cost, starting with the smaller one. We call it A. And then in the second step, you have to develop the cash flow and incremental cash flow series using the LCM or least common multiplier of years, assuming reinvestment in alternatives. Looking between these two cash flow, alternative A have the lower initial investment. So the easier way to illustrate this is to put all the information in an Excel table. So the first column is going to be the year. So our year is going to be from year 0 to year 10. The second column will list all the cash flow for the alternatives with the lower investment. Remember, we have to rearrange it accordingly in order. So we start with the lower investment. So the lower investment in this case is the alternative A because it have lower $8,000 investment compared to alternative B, which have $13,000 investment. And then our third column lists all the cash for the other alternatives. So if money is going out, you indicate the value as negative. If money is coming in, you indicate it as a positive value. Then the fourth column is the incremental value. In this case, we use the formula given earlier whereby cash flow in column B, which have the larger initial investment, deduct or minus with cash flow in column A. Finally, we will need to total all the cash flow in each columns. In the third step, we draw an incremental cash flow diagram. On the fourth step, we count the number of sign changes in the incremental cash flow series to determine if there are multiple values of rate of return. So if necessary, we can also use the Nostrom criterion or test 2 to determine if a single positive root exists. Okay, if you redraw the cash flow diagram based on the incremental value, this is how it's going to look like. Now, let's look at how many sign changes there is in our incremental column. There is one sign changes from year 0 to year 1, another from year 4 to year 5, and another one in year 5 to year 6. So according to the first Descartes test, there are a total of 3 sign changes in the incremental cash flow series, which indicates that there are 3 possible roots or 3 possible values of the rate of return. And then based on the Nostrom's criteria or test 2, we cannot do that yet because we did not do the cumulative incremental column yet. Now, what I want you to do for your homework or for your exercise as evidence of your online attendance is that you need to complete the remaining steps for this ROR evaluation. First, you need to find the total number of sign changes based on the Nostrom's criteria. So in order to do that, you have to create another column, which is the cumulative incremental column. And then the second one is that you need to set up the present worth equation based from the incremental cash flow diagram. And then you have to find the estimated rate of return using the estimation method and based on the incremental series. Finally, you need to decide which are the better alternatives based from your calculation. So the alternatives can be selected by following this guideline. Okay, that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video session, and if you don't understand anything, please feel free to text me via WhatsApp, or I'll open up a forum in the YouLearn for you to discuss among yourselves, and maybe I'll look into that as well. So please don't forget to do the exercise as a kind of proof as for your online attendance lah. Okay, so we'll meet again in the next video session on the next topic. Okay, till then, see you later, alligator. Bye bye.